Carol was already running late when she noticed the box. It was sitting on the gravel shoulder of Route 9, half hidden under the shadow of an old oak tree. She almost drove past it. She would have, if it hadn't been for the way the wind caught the corner of a blanket draped over the top and lifted it just enough to make her look twice. She pulled over. She told herself it was probably nothing. Old shoes, maybe. Someone's forgotten junk. But her gut said otherwise, and Carol had learned a long time ago to listen to her gut. She walked over, pulled the blanket back, and gasped. Looking up at her from inside the box was a kitten, small, trembling, with the most enormous eyes she had ever seen on an animal that size. And it was purple. Not a little purple. Not a trick of the light. Fully, completely, unmistakably purple. Carol stood there for a moment with her hand over her mouth. Then the kitten let out the tiniest, most pitiful sound she had ever heard, and that was that. Decision made. Carol picked up that box, put it on her passenger seat, and drove. She talked to it the whole way there. She didn't even realize she was doing it at first. "You're okay," she kept saying, glancing over at the box. "You're okay now." The kitten didn't make another sound. It just watched her with those big eyes, shaking. Carol had originally been heading home after a long day visiting her sister across town. A vet visit wasn't part of the plan, but there was no way she was taking this animal home without getting it checked first. She pulled up the nearest clinic on her phone and drove straight there. The receptionist didn't even flinch at the sight of the purple kitten, which Carol thought was either impressive professionalism or a very long week. She was told to take a seat. Dr. Hale would be with her shortly. Dr. Hale was a tall man with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and the calm, unhurried manner of someone who had seen everything. He walked in, looked at Carol, looked at the kitten, and stopped walking. Just stopped. "Well," he said slowly. Carol watched his face do something complicated. He pulled on his gloves and approached the kitten carefully, the way you approach something you're not entirely sure about. The kitten watched him, but stayed still. Dr. Hale ran his fingers gently through the purple fur, pressed lightly along its sides, lifted one of its paws, and looked at it for a long moment. Then he straightened up and looked at Carol with an expression she could not read at all. "Where did you find this?" he asked. She told him. Route 9, the box, the blanket, the gut feeling. He nodded slowly, like pieces were clicking into place inside his head. "I need to make a phone call," he said. "Please wait here." He walked out of the room with his phone already in his hand. Carol looked down at the kitten. "What are you?" she whispered. The kitten blinked at her. Dr. Hale came back 15 minutes later with a look on his face that made Carol's stomach drop. He sat down across from her and folded his hands. "The purple," he said carefully, "appears to be paint. Animal safe, thankfully, but paint nonetheless." He paused. "Someone did that deliberately?" Carol felt sick. "But that's not what concerns me most." He exhaled. "Carol, the bone structure on this animal, the size of its paws, its eye shape, these are not consistent with a domestic cat. Not even close." Carol stared at him. "Then what is it?" "I don't want to say anything definitive until a wildlife specialist confirms it," he said. "But I want you to be prepared. This may not be a kitten at all." He let her take the animal home that night, with strict instructions to bring it back. He had calls to make, people to loop in. Carol named her Violet on the drive home. It felt right. That first night, she set up a little bed in the corner of her bedroom. Violet ignored it completely and curled up at the foot of Carol's bed instead, tucking herself against Carol's ankles as she'd always been there. Carol lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling. Violet purred, soft and steady, like a tiny engine. "Whatever you are," Carol thought, "you're mine now." In the days that followed, the mystery only deepened. Violet didn't behave like any cat Carol had ever been around. She was calm in a way that felt almost unnatural, not lazy, but deliberate, just aware. She watched everything with an intensity that was a little unnerving when you caught it straight on. She didn't mind water. She barely made a sound. And those paws, Carol kept looking at those paws. Way too big and wide. Carol spent hours on her laptop looking up breeds. Nothing matched. She also found something else. On the side of the cardboard box, barely visible under a water stain, was a partial address, a street name and a number, written in faded marker. She sat with it for a while before calling the police. The officer who came by was professional and thorough. He took the box, photographed the address, and listened to everything Carol said. Before he left, he paused at the door. "That part of town," he said carefully, "has come up before in some ongoing investigations." He didn't say more than that. He didn't have to. A detective came by a few days later. He told her they were looking into a possible connection between the address and reports of illegal animal activity in the area. He asked her to keep Violet at home, to report anything unusual, and to contact him directly if anyone came around asking questions. Carol said yes to all of it. She also called a security company the next morning and had cameras put up around her property. She checked her locks twice a day. She told her closest friends what was happening, not all of it, just enough that someone else knew. And through all of it, Violet sat in sunbeams and watched birds through the window and pressed her big, warm head against Carol's hand whenever Carol needed it most. The call came on a Tuesday. There had been a raid. The address from the box had led investigators to a warehouse on the edge of the industrial district. Inside, they found cages, wild animals, young ones, mostly, barely old enough to be away from their mothers, young panthers among them. Carol sat down on the kitchen floor when the detective told her that part. She didn't plan to. Her legs just stopped working. She looked at Violet, who had padded over and was now sitting directly in front of her, watching her face. A panther. Her Violet was a panther. A wildlife specialist confirmed it a week later. Young female, maybe 4 months old, somehow separated from the facility, somehow ended up in a cardboard box on Route 9, somehow found by the one woman in the world who would pull over. The detective told Carol she had helped break the case open, that without her, the connection might never have been made. Carol nodded and said thank you, and waited until he left to cry. She knew what had to happen. She had known it, somewhere quiet inside herself, since Dr. Hale first looked up from those enormous paws with that complicated expression on his face. Violet belonged somewhere wild, somewhere with room to grow into whatever she was becoming. Carol visited the sanctuary before she made the final decision. It was everything it should be. Wide open spaces, staff who spoke about their animals the way Carol spoke about Violet. She watched Violet move through the intake area and saw something shift in her, a loosening, like a breath finally let all the way out. Still, leaving was the hardest thing Carol had ever done. She knelt down and held Violet one last time. Violet pressed her forehead against Carol's cheek and stayed there for a moment. "You're okay," Carol whispered. Same words as the first day. "You're okay now." She volunteers there on weekends, has since the beginning. She watches Violet from a distance, bigger now, moving with that quiet, deliberate grace that was always there from the very first night. And sometimes, if Carol is very still and very quiet, Violet will stop and look back at her. And that, Carol has decided, is enough.